To bring on our second guest this evening. He's a journalist, writer. He's worked for The Economist and the World Trade Organization. His latest book, Immigrants, Your Country Needs Them, is out now. Would you please welcome Philippe Legrain? How are you? Philippe. Your book is Immigrants, Why Do We Need Them? Without sounding like I'm about to put on a white cloak and a pointy hat. So, why do we need them?
Well, I think the better question is, why are we so desperately afraid of them? I mean, you know, the way that most people look at immigrants is kind of like they're the barbarians at the gates. And, you know, but actually everyone really is an immigrant if you think about it. Everyone, if you go back a bit in time, comes from somewhere else. And, you know, people who happen to live on the other side of a national border are human beings just like us.
Well, you're one then yourself. Philippe Legrain isn't exactly the most English name in the world.
Yeah, that's true. Well, my dad's French, but I was born in London, so I guess that makes me sort of an immigrant too.
Yeah, here, nobody's mentioned it here. None of the parties have mentioned it yet, because I think they're all terrified to mention the immigration thing, because you just get accused of being racist. People are hypersensitive about it, and especially in election times. It's just one of these sort of topics that, especially the press, right-wing press in particular, just sort of jump on all the time. Do you think people are just overly sensitive all the time whenever people try to have a rational discussion about people coming from other parts of the world to live somewhere?
Yeah, well, I think the thing is that very often people are opposed to immigration for racist reasons, but sometimes they're not. And obviously you have to be able to have a discussion. You also got to realise where people are coming from, because, you know, people basically start from an emotional dislike of foreigners and they come with all sorts of like pseudo-rational arguments. So you see, well, if immigrants all live together, it's like, oh, they live apart, and then they start spreading out. You know, oh God, they're going everywhere. If they don't intermarry, you know, they're all sticking together. If they do, oh, they're nicking all the women. You know, if they're working, oh, they're nicking our jobs. If they're not, oh, they're living off the dole. You can't win. I mean, you know, this is kind of like damned if you do, damned if you don't.
One of the stories that's come out recently, they were talking about on the radio recently, it was about the foreign nationals are now sunbathing topless in Ireland, and I was in the car going around the roundabout just waiting for him to mention the beach, but there was a man rang in to Joe Duffy. He was there. I'm 76, Joe. You know, they're sunbathing here near the lake. There has to be rules, Joe. There has to be rules.
The thing is that people actually aren't aware of the sort of like the complete contradictions in the way that they think. I was on this BBC programme of people who had left London. They emigrated because they thought there were too many foreigners in London, so they went to live in Cyprus, where there are even more foreigners. And then they were saying, you know, it's terrible in London, you know, the immigrants, you know, they don't learn the language, they don't fit in, they're all just sticking to themselves. And there they are in Cyprus. They all speak English, they only eat English food, they don't mix with anyone else there, so they have no self-awareness. And
I have to be honest with you, the most, I suppose, integrated thing I've ever seen in my life was at Heathrow Airport about 6 or 9 months ago. I was walking through Heathrow Airport. I thought this was beautiful. I saw a man, a Sikh gentleman who was about 60-odd years of age with a grey beard, walking through Heathrow Airport with a Burberry turban. Honest to God, Steve, that is the greatest example of integration I've ever seen. That's saying, like, I'm a Sikh and I'm keeping up to my religious beliefs by wearing a turban, but I'm making a Burberry to get down with the job.
New immigration acts come in here, and it sounds remarkably like the one in Australia, actually.
Yeah, well, I mean,
very scary.
The thing is that, I mean,
have you seen the one that's come in here?
I mean, Ireland is sort of trying to copy Britain, which is in turn copying Australia, and it's a stupid kind of system. I mean, it's the idea that you kind of assess with points how valuable someone is. I mean, you know, but how are you supposed to guess how valuable someone is? You look at, in Britain, 21 of our Nobel Prize winners started off as refugees. Now, if it was the bureaucrat at the door, they'd go, oh, no, hang on a minute, you know, you're a refugee, or we don't want you in. And actually, you'd have turned away a Nobel Prize winner. More importantly, I mean, you know, the notion that you can just pick and choose just exactly who is right and who is valuable and who is not, I think is quite offensive.
And also having to go around with an ID card with a chip in it, your DNA details, fingerprints.
Yeah, no one else does.
But that's a joke, is that, I mean, it's only being applied for non-Irish, non-EU citizens. Like, how are the Garda going to know, oh God, he's not European?
Yeah.
Or, well, you can only find out if someone should be having a card by actually stopping them. And what you're going to find, of course, is that it's going to be, you know, black people being stopped the whole time. You know, when they did the Ring of Steel around the City of London to to protect against IRA terrorists. Funny enough, they found that most people stopped were black. It's like, how many black IRA terrorists were there? I mean, you know, that's the logic of that kind of thing. It's going to be, you know, it's going to be constant harassment of people saying, you know, prove that you are who you are.
You're a big advocate of just opening up all the borders and not having, because your theory is that you can't stop this happening. If people want to come to a country, they'll come to the country. So why close the border off entirely? Just open it up.
Yeah, well, I think borders should be open. Personally, I don't think migration is a bad thing, but even if you do think it is, banning it, driving it underground causes far more problems than legalising and regulating.
Is there a recognisable pattern in the scale or in the nature of immigration into Ireland? Like, are people staying for a certain period of time generally, or are they leaving, or are they staying?
Well, one of the things that you find is that when you open the borders, as Ireland did to the Poles and all the other Eastern Europeans who joined in 2004, when you can come and go freely, actually most people tend to come temporarily. Why? For the logical reason that most people actually don't want to leave home forever. You know, they're going away for a bit of time, you know, to learn English, to earn some extra cash, to then go back, buy a house, start their own business. It's only when you try and stop people moving that once they finally get in, they say, well, you know, if I go back again, I won't be able to get back in, so I better stay. And you end up staying for good, not because you want to, but because, you know, the controls make you. So actually, you'll find that when you open the borders, most people come temporarily, and that's certainly the experience that you've seen in Britain and in Ireland and in Sweden. You know, people actually become like international commuters, like back and forth on Ryanair, come and do up a house here, then they go back and buy a house back in Poland. And I think that's a fantastic thing. It's just the same that we're doing the whole time. You know, we're jetting around the world, going on holidays, retiring in Spain, whatever. And I don't see why it shouldn't be true for Poles and others.
It was a very arrogant thing, I always think, for people to say, oh, I'm coming over here. You know, you have people sitting in Kerry going, they'll all be coming here. And just why? Why so arrogant that you think, oh, I'm going to come to Kerry, there's some guy in Poland going, that's where I go Kerry, yes, yummy butter. So all this world movement and people moving around, because you're a big believer in globalisation as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, I think we've got to get used to, in the 21st century, that people are going to be on the move a lot, and that's, you know, you, me, as well as people who were born in less rich countries. And why is it okay for us to move around the world freely? Why is it okay for us to go on holiday in Thailand, to retire in Spain? And why is it not okay from someone to Thailand to come work here? Globalisation is about how the world is coming closer together, how people who are much, you know, far apart geographically get closer together, whether it's because of trade, or whether it's because they're on MySpace, or whether it's because you know, they've met people on holiday. It's much tighter connections between people who are further apart.
People do see that as the multinationals and the corporations and the money, and that's what it's all about. The multinational is the thing that people just fixate on.
Well, at the end of the day, multinational is only one way in which people trade. I mean, and it's only one way in which poor countries are getting richer. If you look at people, until very recently, the vast majority of the people in the world were subsistence farmers. Over the past 20, 30 years, a lot of them have moved into starting to work in factories, and that's what we went through with the Industrial Revolution 100, 200 years ago. And that's a really nasty process, because, you know, people are uprooted from the land and they go and work in factories which aren't particularly nice. But as a result, they get richer, and that's how you have to go through that transition process in order to get to where we are now. I mean, and you can see places like South Korea, they've done it in a generation. In 1960, their main export was wigs, and now they make you know, mobile phones and TVs and cars and whatever.
It's a dangerous process, because if you look at globalisation, that will take effectively a third world nation to a first world nation within a generation. There hasn't been the learning process for that society to absorb the change in the social structures that will be brought upon it because of that. But also what you're doing then is you're advancing an economy to one state, and often that is being driven by a multinational coming in, getting tax breaks, soaking up the tax breaks, soaking up the cheap labour, until the cost of that labour goes up because the expectations of that society go up. And then they move on, and that's what's happening in Ireland. A lot of companies now saying, it's not as advantageous to be here now as it is in Lithuania, so we'll leave. And those people who had the job are now left and cast aside, and they're on somewhere else.
Yeah, Pfizer in Cork, they lost.
Sorry, I have to get that off my chest.
I was waiting for the joke for about 5 minutes. I didn't know you had it in.
I'm not always on shit, you know. It's supposed to be a comedy show, not a funny one. But